Hey guys, Analog Man here for another deck profile, and just like my previous deck profile, we'll be diving into Darkknightmon again, once again, except this time with a mix of D-Brigade into it, essentially forming a type of deck that some have nicknamed the Dark Brigade, because it runs both the D-Brigade engine and the Darkknightmon engine, and surprisingly, originally I wasn't really a fan of mixing these two engines together because I was mainly afraid of the fact that the engines might conflict and maybe kind of mess up the searching. But surprisingly, it's actually been working out very well, especially with the new option card Prime Memory Boost from BT7. The card actually helps you essentially search for all your Darkknightmon cards, and then you get to basically just ditch the rest of the D-Brigade cards, which will essentially help you fill up your trash and summon basically the Darkdramon of the D-Brigade deck out, which is really nice. Also, the fact is that with Darkknightmon, the deck has a little bit more power to it. You can essentially swing a little bit harder than usual because with Darkknightmon and Skullknightmon in conjunction, you can essentially swing for 2 security at 7 to 9,000, depending on what you have underneath it, which is really nice. Um, Along with that, it's just the fact that both are really fast and they both essentially recur themselves. They don't basically lose their board. They always come back with something else. So your opponent kind of is forced to either take care of it or kind of just essentially lose, basically, which is how this deck is really fast because essentially it can outspeed most hybrid decks because you're just kind of swinging each turn, poking them. And then if you can get a Nightmon out, you basically just took away 2 of their security. So it's a really powerful deck. So I just wanted to show you guys. So let's actually get into the deck profile. So first of all, we are starting with 4 Pagumons as usual for a black deck, especially D-Brigade slash Darkdramon or Darkknightmon. You basically will be getting on deletion effects, and Pagu essentially helps facilitate that and kind of helps you draw extra cards that you could potentially use to win. So having this at 4 is really nice. We don't run a 5th egg at the moment because I feel having this at 4, just these 4 helps with consistency, so you're not kind of stuck with the 1 egg that you don't want to use. But yeah, Pago's at 4, really nice. Being D Brigade, of course, we're running the. Those are just level 4s, my bad. So this being D Brigade, this deck basically runs the 16 rookies, so it's basically the standard ones. So let's actually get into it so you guys can see what it is. So we have the 4 Commandramons from BT3, really nice, 2-drop, 3,000, and in hybrid format, this surprisingly is pretty powerful because some of the hybrids, especially like the lower level ones, especially the ones that are searchers, they're all very weak because of the fact that they search so much, so they kind of have to have a counterpoint, so this will swing over them pretty easily, so some 50-50 times this will live, and you can just evolve on it, which is really nice. Then we'll play 4 of the Commandramons from the starter deck because it is a beefy guy. It's at 5,000. It is a 4 cost, but sometimes, I mean, it doesn't really matter because then you could just put them to 1, if you have 3, so it's not too bad. Then we have 4 of the Commandramons from BT4. This one is like your main searcher for D-Brigade cards because basically when it dies, it gets to look at the top 3 and you can just play any Commandramon. So you're basically recurring. So no matter what, if this dies, it basically just replaces itself. So it's like really solid. So you have to have this at 4. Then for the last Commandramon slash rookie, we run the new blocker from BT5 because this thing is a blocker and the fact that it doesn't cost memory to swing with it. So you kind of want to have it for like the end game essentially, and of course it helps protect your security. And if you lose it, it doesn't really matter because then you can just use that and recycle them into your deck to make Darkdramon. So really nice. We run 16, and that's literally all the rookies we run for this build because the deck already kind of has too much rookies in this case. So just keeping it at the D-Brigade Commandramon should be good. Let's get into the level 4s actually. So for level 4s, we are running the 4 Skull Nightmon pre-release ones. Shout out to my friend Dan for helping me get these. This card is really fun because it is a 2 cost to evolve, but you can always just hard play it because it is a 4 cost. It is slightly weak because of the 3000, but that's not really the point of the card essentially. The point of it is to attack while you have a Deadly Axemon on board, and that allows you to basically evolve into its next form, which is darkknightmon, and darkknightmon will gain benefits from him and the Deadly Axemon. This will give him security +1, and the Deadly Axe will give him +2000. So essentially, you're swinging for 2 security at 9000. And in the hybrid format or BT7 in general, it's not really that bad to swing into like a yellow security or a red security or even a blue security because their security is going to be really weak. As long as it's not anything higher than the level 5s, they will be basically living through the hit. And even if it dies, you get to recur your board just like d-brigade. So just having 2 engines essentially continuously rushing actually helps push for game most of the time. So really nice. Absolute must have at 4 this card. Then we run the 4 Deadly Axemons that I mentioned a second ago. This guy's really cool. He's actually a searcher too. On play, you get to look at the top 5 cards and you can just add up to 2 Nightmons. And there are moments where you will get this one and darkknightmon. So you basically get to search both. And the fact that it's only a 4 cost, so it's not too bad to hard play. And the fact is that once this is on board and this is on board, you could just make a darkknightmon for free because you do not have to play the memory cost for the evolution into darkknightmon when you put this underneath his sources. So it's really cool how that works. The only downside is that if you have this out on top of something, you have to trash its sources, which does conflict with a tamer in the deck, Analog Boy. The problem is that it misses timing from what I've heard for a recent ruling from my friend who's actually our judge for our locals. He mentioned that as if the darkknightmon does not have sources that isn't these two, it will basically miss timing and you won't be able to basically activate Analog Boy because it has to check if you have sources, but darkknightmon will play these 2 back onto the field. So I'll show an example of that at the end of the video so you can kind of understand what I mean. The ruling is kind of weird, but that's just how it is because that's how everything resolves in Digimon at this moment, so it's whatever. So this is the package for darkknightmon. Then for the other level 4s of the deck, we have the 3 Seals, or actually, my bad, the 4 Seals Dramon, because you still want to have D-Brigade and have defense, and he is a pretty beefy blocker at 6,000. The only downside is that if he attacks, you do lose 2 memory, but still, he's a pretty big blocker. Then the last 2 we have is 2 Grumblemons, because there are moments where you will have your Izzy or your Izzy and Joe, and you can evolve on top of this and go for a game, basically, in conjunction with darkknightmon. So really nice. That's all for the level 4s. We run about, let's see, 8, 12, we run 14 level 4s, so it's kind of almost the same amount as this, but just 2 short. But this ensures that we see them as often as possible, as much as the rookies, so it's really nice. We only run 1 level 5 in this deck, and if you haven't guessed at this point what it is, let me show you. It is 4 copies of darkknightmon. Once again, shout out to my friend Dan, who helped me get these really awesome cards. Honestly, I think because of the artwork, that's kind of what got me interested in the deck because it just looked really cool how it works. So for those that don't know or haven't seen my previous video, on play this card, you basically get to re-equip the Skull Nightmon and the Deadly Axemon, which will basically give it both security +1 and a +2000. So if your opponent doesn't take care of this, next turn, this is swinging and doing a lot of damage to them. And then, of course, on deletion, as I mentioned, all turns. So on either of your turn, if anybody kills this thing and it has both Skull Nightmon or Deadly Axemon on there, you can basically summon both back or either one if you only have one underneath. So no matter what, you're basically keeping your board and then remaking it next turn, which is really nice. Like this card is really bonkers, and I'm honestly really hyped for the announcement of BT10 because it is Cross Wars themed, as most have heard. So potentially we will be getting support for this deck to essentially boost it to the point where it might possibly be tier 1. It's already a huge contender with the boost from the D-Brigade, but if it was pure, potentially it could be powerful enough to take on some of the tier 1 decks, depending on the builds. But yeah, really awesome card. Really cool level 5 and really cool artwork. Then for level 6s, we of course run the 4 Dark Dramons because we run 16 D-Brigades. Well, technically 20 if you include the Seals Dramons. So no matter what, we're going to be ditching them to the trash, and then eventually once we get 5, we summon this for 3 cost, and it has rush. And even better if they gave you 3 memory, because then you're at 0 and you get to rush for game basically. Really cool card. And also the fact is that it does count as a D-brigade for Darkdramon for himself. So if you have this kind of trashed in here, you basically still get to get this ability off as long as you have 5 D-brigades for 2 memory each, which is really nice. That's the only level 6 we run in the deck, actually, surprisingly. Oh, there's a glare there. The rest is just option and tamers, so let's actually get into the options. So for the first option we run 4 Pride Memory Boost. This is the new memory boost from BT7 that honestly I feel is pretty broken, I would say, and as expected, it does have Knightmon on it, so I assumed it was going to be broken. So this basically, when you activate, you get to reveal the top 3 cards and just play any 4 cost or lower black Digimon, and it also acts as a memory boost. And in conjunction with basically all the cards in this deck, except for the blocker, Grumblemon, Dark Knightmon, and Darkdramon, and basically the rest of this stuff, you basically are guaranteed to summon everything that this looks up, which is really nice. You only get to summon 1, but the fact that you basically maintain a consistent board and you have a memory boost at the same time for next turn is really nice. So if you can do a sequential of these, you can potentially just flood the board and just swing for game. So it's really nice. Then we run 2 ultimate flares because we still need removal. So having this at crucial moments can potentially help you get game. And I honestly would rather run this over Onslaught because a lot of Digimon later on in BT8 and just in general now, they all have effects of on deletion, including these guys. So it's just I'd rather de-digivolve it down so it doesn't get those effects basically. So really nice to have 2 of this. Then for tamers, we run 2 Izzy because we want to keep our set our memory to 3. Plus, it lets us stack our deck basically to how we want it. Then we run 2 Izzy and Joes because if your opponent decides to overextend, you can capitalize on that and gain 2 memory. Plus, every time when you swing with this or anything, you basically get, and it dies, you basically get to tap this and draw a card. Then for the last tamer, we run 2 Analog Boys because Analog Boy in conjunction with this, when it has other sources, basically lets you kind of keep going and continuing your turn. And of course, it works in conjunction with Darkdramon. Well, not really Darkdramon sometimes, but like just in general, it works pretty well no matter what. So it's pretty nice card. Anyway, that's it for the deck. Let me show you that combo I was talking about actually. So basically, the combo works like this. So for example, if you have a Deadly Axemon and a Skull Knightmon, so the combo is essentially how this works. So when you attack, this will trash all its sources, so it will just become a sourceless Digimon, and then it will equip itself underneath it, and then during the attack, it just becomes this for no cost. But the problem is when it dies. Basically, the problem is that when it dies, its effect says that it replays these 2 out suspended like this, and this effect will trigger. But the problem is when you have Analog Boy here and you do not have any other sources except for these 2, this will miss timing, as I mentioned before. The only way to bypass this is, for example, if you have the Skull Knightmon in Raising and you push it up and it has, say, a source like this, then when you evolve, you are essentially doing this. You are tucking Deadly Axemon underneath, and then when you attack, when this attacks and basically deletes itself, it will play these 2, but it will still count that it had Commandramon underneath it. This will then trigger Analog Boy to give you a memory and hatch an egg. But if you do not have any other sources aside from these 2 cards, this effect will not resolve, sadly, which honestly kind of really sucks about the deck, but that's just how Analog Boy's timing works at the moment. So just a heads up for anybody that wants to try out this deck. That is something you do have to look out for because it technically is a misplay and you could be called out on it. So I want people to know that basically I want people to know that way that they don't mishandle it or to get into any arguments about it. But that's just how the deck works at the moment. Surprisingly, this deck is very, very, very fast. I've managed to basically outspeed almost most of the fastest decks, even red. So hopefully this deck gets better later on in BT8, which I know it will because we will be getting a new Nightmon that basically gives jamming and blocker, and it can evolve on top of a level 4 for 1 cost, so it's going to be really powerful. And in conjunction with Chimeramon, you can potentially Jogress into a lot of things. I've seen builds where they basically run the yellow engine in this, and you basically run the Nightmon engine as a boost to the yellow, and you could potentially make Lord Nightmon and swing and just summon more stuff and basically maintain Dark Nightmon along with Lord Nightmon together. So it's a really cool concept that this deck is going to be very versatile. Like that's the cool thing is that it's an engine, so it can fit into other decks. It's just essentially the matter of figuring out how to do it basically. But I mean, you can build this however you want, but this is just the d-brigade version that I thought of that essentially it works the best so far with d-brigade, sadly. As you may have seen, I put up a pure version of this deck already, and the problem is that the pure version is fast, but it's still not fast enough sometimes, and it can't really go for game on certain occasions. So it's just with D-Brigade, you have that extra, like oomph, like power to essentially punch through, but at the moment, this is basically the best we can get unless there are other builds that I haven't seen yet. I will tinker around with potentially a security control variant of this because it is my bread and butter to play security control decks. So I'm going to be kind of workshopping this to basically see if I can make a version of it that just is just full on removal nonstop. But we'll have to see. I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, thank you for watching another deck profile. I really appreciate you guys watching. Just like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the deck, and what things that that you found kind of weird, or even advice on this deck because I mean I already had some trouble figuring out, and I finally got to this build, so I just wanted you guys to see it. And anyway, see you guys next time.